What if Silent Hill, an old-school Resident Evil, secretly had an affair, got pregnant, and gave birth to something that blended elements of both into a strange indie love child? Well, Polish developer Sonka intends to answer that question with their new game Holstin, which is in development for PC, Switch, Xbox, and PlayStation. It's on everything, okay? It's on everything. Holstin was revealed a while ago, but now has a playable 2-scenario demo, with a third scenario to be added at a later date on Steam, which I completed and I want to talk about today. Consider this a sort of review of the demo. So, as aforementioned, there are 2 scenarios to this demo, one focused on exploration and puzzle solving, and the other one on Holstin's combat. The latter being where one of the game's biggest gimmicks lies, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. The first scenario, titled the Janowski House, or Janowski House, I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that, Janowski, maybe, takes us through a tentacle fetish-ridden slime-filled house. It's laden with various environmental puzzle solving, such as finding light bulbs and fuses to play around with the mechanic that electrical light works as the slime's sort of kryptonite, clearing the path for you and granting access to more of the house for further exploration and light bulb discovery. The story is kind of unclear with this one, but the mood presented here is really quite tantalizing. There is an overall sense of dread that will be familiar to fans of Silent Hill, even with its blend of pixel art and 3D rendered environments, of which you can turn clockwise or anti-clockwise respectively, making it easier to fully search the areas for key items and the like. This is a really interesting way of addressing the issue that fixed cameras had with the games that have so obviously inspired Holstin. There were times where the fixed cameras, as cinematic as they were, could unintentionally, or intentionally, have key items or points of interest obscured to the player, creating long periods of time being lost when you really just had to hit the action button in a room that you'd already been in 100 times. The only issue with Holstin's rotating camera is that it can only be moved in predefined amounts of rotation. So when you want to move it just a bit, it moves more than you wanted, and it did cause me some discomfort with an almost motion sickness feeling. I hope this can be addressed by the developers in the full release. Regardless, Holstin still manages to capture that feeling of some otherworldly oppression that sparks up your curiosity and anxiety simultaneously. There's a weird boy in the cupboard who tells you about how he hid the fuses and the light bulbs. He never emerges to you, but is somehow in every cupboard in the demo all at the same time, which definitely raised my starving Silent Hill loving eyebrows with its understated creepiness. There's also a weird woman humming from behind one of the locked doors, which had ominous implications while you're trying to figure things out. Then the phone rings out of nowhere. And I'll be honest, it made me jump a little at first. My point is, the setting and atmosphere is presented in a really eerie way. The sound effects and ambient soundtrack are working really nicely together to ground you in the situation. The solutions to the puzzles confused me for way longer than they should have, considering their obviousness after completion, but I didn't want the demo to end, which is a great sign. The whole demo is in the Polish voice language with English subtitles. I don't know if they planned to add English voices, but the Polish ones felt very well delivered. This could be me being oblivious to what good and bad Polish voice acting sounds like, but either way, it served far better than some corny English voice work that unfortunately plagues the indie scene at times. I'm going to give Scenario 1, the Janowski House, an 8 out of 10, with its losing marks for the camera rotation making me feel sick and some of the puzzles being a bit rudimentary. Now, Scenario 2, as I mentioned before, is focused on the combat aspect of the game. It's presented as a museum tour where the mechanics are drip-fed throughout. There's a dodge which feels really satisfying to slide by incoming threats, narrowly avoiding taking some grief from the bubonic zombie monsters trying to murder you. There's a kick which allows you to knock enemies down or destroy certain objects. This feels really nice when it connects, but sadly its ambiguous hitbox makes it tough to really rely on, as many times I thought I was well in range and on target, but it whiffed and then I took damage because of it. I would love to see this be tweaked in the full release. The developers at Sonka decided to go fully as opposed to semi with the Resident Evil influence when it comes to the inventory screen. Items can be combined to create ammo or stronger healing items. It even just uses green herbs because I guess why not? I would have liked to have seen something a bit more original for the healing, something that somehow reflected this new game's world, but I guess hey ho, at least there's no confusing what the green herb does. Then there's the firearm mechanics, which I'm sure is something that caught most people's attention who have heard of this game already. The overhead camera perspective shifts to the oh-so-familiar over-the-shoulder perspective whenever you aim down sights with a weapon, letting you place shots in a more precise way that anyone who's played the countless RE4 clones will be extremely comfortable with. This sounded kind of janky on paper, I'll admit, and even when I saw footage of it in action, it still looked as though it could be disorienting for the player. Well, after spending a bunch of time with it, I would say it sits somewhere in the middle. The first few times I aimed down sight, it was a bit dizzying, but after repeat exposure, it felt more natural and actually quite impressive. It's not exactly something we haven't played before, but it is in the fact that it merges these two ideas together. The world looks different over the shoulder, and being able to place the shots on these part 2D and 3D enemies, seeing them running at you as you seek to dismember them is quite exhilarating. My only gripes were that my mouse placement was getting confused coming in and out of the aim down sights perspective, which led me to be facing a way I didn't intend to when returning back to top-down view. The enemy types were a bit confusing too, mostly consisting of generic zombies, but some of them could do some wacky shit that I'm not sure I really liked. Some of them wearing full shell suits kind of just made me feel like I was killing drug dealers or something. So I hope these are just early prototypes and the full game will feature some more scarier and maybe more varied enemies. Some of the weapon sounds were far too ear-piercing, which took some of the fun out of firing them, the pistol being the worst offender. Now I know guns are supposed to be loud, guys, okay, but other games do this without the high end giving me a headache. So the way all of these systems work together is all governed by a central health bar, which also acts as a stamina bar. Whenever you dodge, kick, or even aim down sights, it will drain your stamina. Taking damage reduces the max stamina that you have until, of course, you kick the bucket when the bar fully depletes. When you run out of stamina completely, you enter a sort of burnout where you're kind of just a sitting duck and need to just wait for the bar to recharge. You can do this faster by standing still, but obviously that isn't always advised. This added some intensity to the encounters, though some people might get frustrated with having to spend a fleeting stamina bar to just simply aim your weapon, especially those not playing with a mouse, as aim sensitivity will be a factor. No one wants to run out of stamina trying to track a target on the controller. I did play a few runs with the controller, and it did feel remarkably well optimized so far, maybe even more enjoyable than the mouse and keys. So console players, not to worry, this isn't one of those games that's going to be like, oh, it's way better on PC. You get a pistol, an AK-47, and a shotgun to play with in this roguelite mode. Each offer their own sets of strengths and weaknesses and recoil patterns that you would expect. I think the AK was my personal favorite. It had some insane recoil, but it was really satisfying to put enemies down with. This scenario had a slightly different way in which your character moves. Unlike the Janowski House, you can strafe while facing in a direction of your choice. The mouse or the right stick turns the game into a sort of twin-stick shooter type of control scheme. It made me wonder how the two will blend together in the full game, whether the exploration and puzzle-solving sections will be completely detached from the combat sections. I really hope not, as survival horror games are best when these things are all combined, such as the horror of knowing that you need to solve a problem, but the looming threat of being attacked at any moment keeps your senses on full alert. I'm going to give Scenario 2 a 7.5 out of 10. The missing marks are that the camera perspective could be a little less confusing to come in and out of, the gun sounds are far too ear-piercing, the kick needs to be further optimized to be a reliable tool, and the enemy types didn't share the same creativity as the rest of the game and could do with being a little scarier to look at. I think Holstin is a genuinely exciting new take on the retro-turned-modern style of indie games. It boasts a gorgeous pixel art presentation with interesting additions such as the rotating camera and over-the-shoulder perspective shift that will set it apart from anything currently being offered on the market. Fans of Silent Hill and Resident Evil games shouldn't overlook this title. Thank you for watching all the way till the end, guys. If you could like the video and subscribe if you're new. I mainly focus on Silent Hill, but I dabble in all things survival horror. Share the video, leave a comment, and tell me what you think about Holston, and I'll see ya when I'm looking at ya. Thank you.